Most definitely, the Independence Day of Malta is our most important national holiday. We have others, of course, like when we became a republic in 1974 and when we obtained our freedom in 1979. But it all started in 1964, when, on the 21st of September 1964, when we got our independence from the British Crown. Now, you mentioned that we were a colony of Britain. Actually, the British arrived in Malta in 1800. And at the time, they came at the invitation, we like to say, of the Maltese, because at the time, the people of Malta thought that the British administration would be better for the island than the Napoleonic French administration. So they were actually happy to welcome the British in the 1800s. So the idea of independence in Malta, also taking into account that it is a very small country, is a very old idea. Then eventually, on the 21st of September, we got our, of 1964, we got our independence from the British. We already had self-government since 1921, which self-government was actually stopped by the British during the World War II and even subsequently until we eventually got our independence. So once we had our independence, we could have our foreign policy, we could have our foreign ministry, we got our official flag as well with the George Cross on the flag. And that is, let's say, the beginning of our enterprise with independence. Our independence throughout the years, throughout the decades to date, has been very, very successful. We have managed to create our economy based on tourism, based on the service industry, based on production. And today, the Maltese economy is doing very, very well, and it is actually expanding. So all this was thanks to the resilience of the Maltese people that was there prior to independence, but thanks to independence, it could finally flourish. So, as I said, Malta is a very, very small country. But on the other hand, as I also said, it is a resilient country, and sometimes size is not what really matters. In fact, we like to say when you have small countries, you may as well have big issues, and that is the way we want the world to see us. As a small country with big issues, big ideas, both in the economic sector, in the political sector. For instance, Malta will soon be a member of the United Nations Security Council in the years 2023-2024. So during that time, to give an example, we are definitely looking to leave our mark on world politics, being part of the Security Council. We are very well prepared for it. All the embassies of Malta abroad are prepared for it, and especially, obviously, our permanent representation in New York. So how does the world see us? Given that we're small, we have to constantly promote ourselves. We have to constantly show our presence in the political field, in the economic field, etc., etc. I mean, obviously, being here in India, one of the largest countries in the world, and almost the largest as far as population-wise is concerned, and the largest democracy in the world, I have to strive continuously to keep Malta on the map for the Indian people. So obviously I try my best, even thanks to this interview, to advertise my country, to show my country to the world. And let's face it, being in India, if I manage to show my country here in India, I'm showing my country to 1/5 of the world's population. So I have quite a task. I have quite a task there. But as I said, we the Maltese are very proud of our country, of our nation, of our nationhood, of our independence, and we try our best to make the world look at us in a positive way, which we believe it does. Even for instance, like when people come to Malta for holiday or for business or to study or to work, they immediately notice our perseverance in holding our identity, even though we are a small country. We have our own language, of which we are proud, and we have made it a point, for instance, to make it one of the official languages of the European Union, of which we are part. So, for instance, when we joined the European Union on the 1st of May 2004, we were making a statement to the world by joining a block of nations, the European nations, and showing that even within this bloc we can now be part of the UN Security Council in the 1980s. So this would be our second time in the United Nations Security Council. Once more, we are punching maybe above our weight, but definitely not beyond our weight in trying to leave our mark on international affairs, on how the world looks at us, and obviously how we look at the world. So, the key industries at the moment, I would say, are the service industries, like for instance financial service, obviously tourism. Tourism was one of the bedrocks of our independent life. Incidentally, when I mentioned Freedom Day, when Malta got its independence in 1964, the British Navy was still in Malta, and it remained up until our freedom in 1979. So at the time, that was part of our economy between 64 and 79. After 79, when the British fleet left Malta, Malta had, let's say, part of its economy cut away, so obviously we needed to replenish with something else. And for instance, tourism, which up until today is 30% of our economy, was one of the bedrocks of our economy since 1979, even before. And now definitely. Obviously COVID was problematic because it stopped tourism from going to Malta, but still, thankfully, and now I'm going to move to other important bedrocks of our economy, like the service industries, like financial services. We have a lot of them in Malta at present. We have also production. In Malta, you cannot produce large items, so you cannot produce cars, you cannot produce planes, because the country is extremely small. It's 316 square kilometers, so it cannot hold, say, an implant of, production of, I don't know, fridges or cars or planes. But we do produce. In the past, we were more into the textile industry. Now we moved more towards the high-tech. For instance, the production of microchips, the production of semiconductors, fabless. Also, we are very much into the production of pharmaceuticals. And I'm mentioning pharmaceuticals because there are a lot of Indian companies in Malta which have interest in pharmaceutical companies stationed in Malta. Some of them wholly owned by Indian companies, and other partially owned by Indian companies. I would like also to mention the production of food items, and I'm mentioning them because this year, 2022, we have started to import a Maltese beer called Chisk. In Malta, it is an alcoholic beer, but since 2021, the producers of this beer, Simmons Farsons Chisk, decided to produce also the non-alcoholic version. And thankfully, an Indian businessman, A&Z Exports, have decided to import this beer to India. And for us, the Maltese, when you hear the word Chisk, you immediately think beer. So for us, Chisk is like a Gucci, it's like an Armani. And I'm very, very proud that during my time here as High Commissioner of Malta to India, this beer started being imported here in India. Also, another food item which is very much part of the Maltese culture, I would say, is the snack twisties. I remember it was always, like, I'm 46 years old, it was always in my life. these. It's a children's snack. Very, very popular in Malta, and so popular that even adults, when they go abroad, usually they like to take some twisties with them, especially if they go abroad for a long time, because it is one of the other tastes of Malta. Here in India, the importer, which is the same person who is importing Chisk, ANZ International, it will not be called twisties because apparently this product already exists in India, so it will be called Vichis, but it will be the same taste. And as a Maltese living abroad, living here in India, I'm looking forward as well to the importation of this snack, because for me it is more than a simple product made in Malta, but it is a taste of my childhood and also a taste of my nation, in a sense. So obviously the production of these foods, the production of foods in Malta is also quite common. In fact, there are many food items which can be found, I would say, only in Malta or almost only in Malta. So we are into that as well. Malta is also into fishing, given that we are an island, and fishing is also a good part of our food economy, let's put it this way, and definitely a part of our diet. Agriculture in the past used to be more proficient. Now it's less proficient. The Maltese soil is very fertile. It's a Mediterranean climate. So, for instance, we do still grow vineyards and grapes in Malta, and we have very, very good wines produced in Malta of very, very high standard. Apart, of course, from the entrepreneurial Maltese way of doing wines, it's also the goodness of the grape, which grows in a Mediterranean climate, which is Malta. And so obviously the production of wines is also part of our economy. When I say tourism, it doesn't necessarily mean, people come to Malta for sun or for sand. People also go to Malta, for instance, to study, and that is like study tourism. We also have health tourism, people visiting to use our medical services. So basically, as I said, the Maltese economy, also I have to mention that the creativity of Maltese entrepreneurs is so large that I cannot just mention everything, because it's really impossible to mention all the new entrepreneurial ideas that there are in Malta, mainly, as I said, in the service industry and the production industry, but of items in a smaller scale. But as I said today, for instance, the microchip is a fundamental product for the whole globalized world. And a microchip is extremely small, but extremely required. So Malta-India relations existed even before our independence. We were both part of the British Empire, especially when the Suez Canal was opened. British ships used to pass through Malta on their way to India and back. So the relation between both countries, even though very far apart geographically, existed even before independence. And because we were both part of the British Empire, today we're both proud members of the Commonwealth. Now, in 1964, when Malta got its independence, India was one of the first countries to recognize Malta. It took just some months, and in 1965, remember, we got our independence on the 21st of September 1964. In March 1965, India recognized Malta. So bilateral relations started then. Not even a year after the attainment of our independence, India had already found it very easy to recognize Malta. And that obviously has always remained in our psyche, that India was always very ready to recognize us amongst the family of nations. And talking about Malta-India international bilateral relations, for instance, we have supported India's seat in the Security Council. We have voted for India. India has voted for us to attain our seat in the Security Council in 2023-2024. We do support each other quite a lot and quite regularly at United Nations level. So even though we are a big, it is a big country and a small country, we find it also very, very easy to arrive towards agreements of mutual benefit at United Nations level. I mentioned also that we are both members of Commonwealth. The Commonwealth of Nations is a very important group of countries in the world with a good agenda of promoting values, of promoting diversity, etc., etc. Recently, in fact, I was lucky to meet the Secretary General of the Commonwealth here in India. And obviously, the fact that we both share this heritage makes our relations also puts them on a solid foundation. Also taking into account, for instance, that the fact that both in Malta and in India, English is very widely spoken, that makes business between countries much easier because there is a common language. And even I mentioned, for instance, students studying in Malta. Usually a lot of students from around the world go to Malta to learn English. In the case of Indians, no, they go to Malta to learn other subjects like management, like caring, computing, etc., because they go to Malta already knowledgeable of the English language. I see our bilateral relations going better and better. Very recently, the Minister of State for External Affairs and Culture, Her Excellency Meenakshi Lehi, visited Malta and met the Foreign Minister of Malta, the Honourable Dr. Ian Borch, and other cabinet ministers. That was a very successful visit, and especially in the post-COVID era, because unfortunately COVID, froze everything from economic activity to political relations, etc., etc. So Minister Lehi's visit was very important for us. Now we are hoping to once more have Maltese ministers, and possibly even higher, visit India in order to keep on deepening our relations. The more our relations become intertwined, the more agreements we will have, the more memoranda of understanding we will have. And I am really, really looking forward, especially in the years to come, in this post-COVID era, as a very exciting time for Malta-India relations, because I am hoping that they will flourish both economically, both politically, and even culturally. So, when we got our independence in 1964, Malta joined the Council of Europe. Now, the Council of Europe is not the European Union. The Council of Europe is also a European project, needless to say. It has more members, but it is loosely knit. At the time, immediately after independence, Malta became a member of the Council of Europe. Now, in 2004, it took some time, Malta finally became a member of the European Union. To become a member, the European Union is today's 27 member states. There are more European countries than 27, but the European Union exists within the European continent as a group of countries, 27 in all, which are much, much closely knit than the members of the Council of Europe, of which we are still members, and all the other. In fact, all EU member states are members of the Council of Europe as well. Now, to go to the European Union started as a project for economic sharing. But eventually it also has its own foreign policy, and although it's much stronger on the economic side. Now, Malta is the smallest country within the European Union. interestingly enough, Malta is the only country which is a member of Commonwealth, of the European Union, and of Schengen. Schengen is, as many people know, a visa agreement, a travel agreement which originated from the European Union, even though there are member countries of Schengen which are not members of the European Union, like Switzerland and like Iceland. Now, Malta, being the smallest full member of the European Union, once more does its best to be a very proactive member of this union. For instance, I have to mention that the current president of the European Parliament, which is one of the institutions of the European Union, is Maltese. Her name is the Honourable Roberta Metsola. Also, Malta has a commissioner, an EU commissioner, within the European Commission, which is sort of like the governing body of the European Union. Every country, every EU member state has the right to nominate a commissioner. And Malta, since we joined the European Union in 2004, we always had a Maltese national who acted as a commissioner of the European Union, so speaking in the name of the Union and covering a subject. For instance, like our current EU commissioner, the Honourable Helena Dalli, covers equality, which is a portfolio which is very, very close to our hearts. So, as I said, albeit small in size, Malta definitely is proactive in the European Union. The good thing about the European Union is that you have a vote and a voice around the table. So there is Malta, there is Germany, the largest economy, the largest European Union country, but Malta has its say, the same as Germany has its say, the same as France has its say, the same as Spain has its say, etc., etc. And that makes us proud. We are always very fond and very protective of our right to have our own voice, to have our own say. This shows both in our membership of the European Union and also in our membership of the United Nations, the largest family of nations, the largest institution of which almost all nations in the world are a member of. You know, tourism for us is like for us diplomats, for us high commissioners, is like the first thing that comes to mind usually. Like even if you have a look at this office, you have photos of Malta with the idea of attracting tourism to Malta. And obviously, you know, once a tourist goes to Malta, he or she will be immediately taken by the culture. So the culture is closely linked to tourism, because when people visit the island, they would immediately want to see what kind of culture this place has. In the case of Malta, apart from the sea and the sun, we have our very, very rich history, which goes back more than 5,000 years to prehistoric times, and there are still very beautiful temples in Malta standing, coming from the prehistoric period. And obviously our history throughout the centuries, we were always colonized up until our independence in 1964. Our colonizers left part of their culture, and that culture, let's put it this way, became part of the mix of our culture. To give an example, our language. Our language started during the time of Arab rule in Malta in 870. Up until today, it has a lot of influence from the Arabic language, even though it's written in Latin alphabet. And in fact, Maltese is the only EU official language which does not have a European ancestry. because Maltese language is a Semitic language. Albeit 900 years of rule after the Arabs left in 1090, 900 years of European rule, European countries, European empires ruling Malta, left their mark in Malta. Malta, in fact, if you go, it looks very much like Italy. It's a mixture. Sometimes it looks like North African countries, sometimes it looks like European countries, especially Italy, even the buildings. In fact, it's known, for instance, as the country of the Baroque, the island of the Baroque, because during the time of the Knights of the Order of St. John, when the Baroque was at its best, you can see a lot of buildings, like for instance our capital city, Valletta, is known as a Baroque capital. If you see most of the buildings, like Auberge de Castile, for instance, or the Cathedral of St. John, they are exquisite, or the Grand Master's Palace, which today acts as the Palace of the President of the Republic. They are all perfect examples of the Baroque art period, and obviously this is part of our culture, and we like to show it to our visitors, those who visit Malta. What does the High Commission do in order to promote tourism? Anything, whenever a Maltese High Commissioner, ambassador like me, speaks about Malta, immediately it is an advert for tourism. And especially when the country is small, once people learn about Malta, the first thing would be, okay, so maybe I will have time to, or the luck to visit this place. So, especially when it's a small country like us, the moment you speak about the country, about anything, about the culture, about the weather, about the food, immediately you are attracting people to ponder on the idea of visiting Malta. So the more I, as High Commissioner, am visible, and the High Commission of Malta is visible in India today, especially on social media, on YouTube, etc., etc., just like this interview, immediately it is one jigsaw puzzle more in attracting people to come to Malta. And I'm amazed. When I arrived here in September 2020, in the height of COVID, I was amazed that even during that time, people were still asking me, like, when can we go to Malta? When are you going to open the visa for Indians to go to Malta? Now, this was the height of COVID, and the interest was already there. It's important to say as well that in the past, for instance, the High Commission was, not during my time, the High Commission was very active in promoting Malta as a film destination. We still are trying to do that, and I know that very famous Indian Bollywood movies were shot in Malta. So obviously once Indian public sees Malta in a movie, in a Bollywood movie, blockbuster Bollywood movie, they will obviously become more interested to visit the place. So as I said, we're trying our best, and even by importing Maltese products to India, in itself, that is also a way to promote the country. And I would like to end on this note, that even the fact that we have imported chisk, and that we will be importing twisties, which will be called Vichis, here in India, and maybe other products in the future, that is also a way for advertising the country and for attracting Indian tourists and businessmen and businesswomen to visit Malta.